Hi, I'm Londa. Subscribe to my channel here on YouTube to save yourself money and to get rid of any and all stress as you learn my how-tos for creative sewing. The thread that you use on your projects is so important. So I want to teach you just the beginnings about thread. First of all, when you're going to use it in a machine, it must not be what this one says, hand quilting thread. And more than that, it says glacé finish. This is a thread that has a waxy finish on it. And one of my newer students came to a class with this thread. She just went to the thread counter at the store and picked up what she thought was a regular thread. Number one, it's too thick. Number two, it's got that glaze on it, which would come off in your tension discs. It says hand. That means it's for hand and not in your machine. If you're sewing garments, you should not sew a garment with shiny embroidery thread. Shiny embroidery thread can be rayon or it can be polyester. I can't tell you how often I've told students as I was traveling around and teaching to bring polyester garment construction thread. But so many people have embroidery machines these days, and that's really exciting and fun. So they have all of these wonderful colors. But this is embroidery thread. This is not thread suitable for sewing together a garment. Do not use this to sew together a garment or a quilt. This is an embellishment thread. Instead, if I say bring polyester thread, I want polyester thread because we're sewing on a knit fabric. So do you see I can pull on this thread? Do you see how it stretches? I'll never forget when my little girl came home one day after I had made her a swimsuit, and she said, "Mommy, it just kept popping, and then the edges started coming undone." Well, it was cotton thread. I didn't realize or hadn't grabbed the right thread. I forget what my knowledge base was at the time, but it was cotton thread. So as the knit stretch of her swimsuit stretched, the thread popped. So do you see, I could tell you immediately that this is cotton thread. I cannot do that to polyester thread. Yes, I can break it if I try real hard, but that's cutting through my fingers before I can break it. So if you're sewing on fabric that stretches, then your thread must stretch. You need polyester thread. Now again, in industry, they've tried to make one thing work for everything. So initially, when knits came out, they came out with cotton covered polyester. So the core of it is cotton, the core of it is polyester, and then it's got cotton wound around it. Dual Duty, Talon, all of these were brands that came on these awful spools, some still do, that have all these ridges in them. This is a stacked spool. It has to ride vertically at your sewing machine. I simply do not like this thread. Again, it's trying to cover the bases for all different types of fabric. It'll work, but it's not the best for anything, so I don't use that. Also, don't go for really, really cheap thread, because cheap thread is made up from fluff on the floor of the factory, and it's not going to last. Let's talk about cotton threads. Cotton threads come in many different weights, and only if you're within one brand of thread do the weights actually mean anything. Here is what sewing machines were developed to work with, and that's a 50 weight thread. This notation here means that this is a 50 weight thread, and it's a 3-ply thread. That means that 3 itsy bitsy threads are twisted together to make this one thread that you see. So this is a great thread for sewing together any kind of cotton garment, cotton quilting, that kind of thing. But you can also get a really, really fine thread. During my heirloom sewing days, when I was sewing on really lightweight batiste, I wanted a skinny thread. So I used 60 weight cotton thread. This is 60 weight 2-ply. So can you see here in the numbers, the higher the number on the thread, the finer the thread. Okay? The lower the number on the thread, the thicker the thread, which is opposite from machine needles. On machine needles, the higher the number on the needle, the bigger the needle. So threads and machine needles go opposite. And I'll just throw in one other piece of information. On hand sewing needles, the higher the number, the smaller the needle. Who thought all that up? Some man. Then there's also heavier threads. We already talked about this in one of my other videos here on the channel. This is a top stitching thread. Now this is all polyester, but that's just a great thread. There are also silk threads, 100% silk threads. If I were going to sew even a polyester chiffon blouse, I might well want this really nice skinny yet strong thread, silk thread. Very expensive, but a real joy to work with. Silk thread won't embed. It won't make little marks when you're pressing, and if you need to baste something together, it just goes in and out smooth as butter. So silk thread is a real treat. So there you have it, a little bit of information on all the different threads available to you. Just remember that if you're using it in a sewing machine, it needs to not say hand. All right? If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me at my website. Join me for Creative Fashion Sewing, where you'll find oodles of inspiration and detailed how-tos. For a constant stream of sewing fun, follow me and subscribe to my social media channels.